Could I interest you in a short 3D platformer Metroidvania set in a dilapidated castle starring a goat, bunny, cat lady? Welcome to Strig's Game Café, everyone. Have a cup of Pseudoregalia. As a kid, my favorite game genre was undoubtedly 3D platformers. Super Mario 64 is the more obvious reference here, but I'd be remiss to not talk about Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, Rayman 2, Bomberman Hero, the original Crash trilogy, and several others. That genre, unfortunately, fell out of fashion as time went by. I wouldn't go too deep on the hows and whys for the genre being in this state, but even now you can find a good 24 videos on YouTube if you want a deeper analysis on that subject. Still, I do need to mention that over the last decade, that genre has experienced a revival. And not just on the AAA side of things. There have been a lot, and I do mean a lot, of interesting new indie IPs, such as Ahead in Time, Castle on the Coast, Cavern of Ruins, Clever Range, Shorn Kid 64, Demon Thirst, Frog and Kill, The King of the Hill, Lawrence Lure, Penny's Big Breakaway, Puffer Story, Slice, Silas Seabull, Spark 2, Spark 3, Super Q 64, Tiny King, Tori 2D, Tori 2, Yellow Taxi Goes Room, Yooka-Laylee, and many others. And that's not even counting future releases like Billy Bust Up, Demon Ties, Double Shake, Electronic, Gear Grid, Haste, Broken Worlds, Paper Clay, Adventure, Rolling Rascal, Rough in the Riverside, The Big Catch, Sorry Saturn, Warrior Spirit, and probably more that I don't have time to fit on this video. Now, those 3D platformers I mentioned are incredibly diverse in terms of genre. You have your level-based platformers, your collectathons, your rhythm games, first-person platformers, and 3D platformer Metroidvanias. That last one is pretty much how I saw Pseudoregalia being described for the first time. I first stumbled upon Pseudoregalia in a video someone made about it, and although I forgot the exact video, I will put in the description if I ever manage to find it again, the initial impression it left on me stuck, and how could it not? A short Metroidvania with a huge emphasis on mastering movement, set in a surreal retro-styled environment that has an almost liminal space-like feel to it. So I watched just a little bit of gameplay, since I didn't want to get too much spoiled for me. Then I listened to the OST, which is really good by the way. And then I made the decision to purchase the game. So what is Pseudoregalia like? Well, when starting a new file, you're met with this. As you can see, the narrative background is so minimal it might as well be non-existent, so I guess it falls to the game's page to give it a little bit of context. Pseudoregalia's Steam page short description says, "Deep within the realm of sleep, Sybil finds herself pulled to a distorted castle." And the About section says, "When reality feels like it's falling apart, one might retreat to a world in their dreams to escape it. Unfortunately, dreams aren't made to last. Explore perverse image of noble living. Grow strong and free those trapped within this rotten dream." Summing it up very quickly, players take the role of Sybil, this goat bunny cat woman, and the whole game is set inside a world of dreams, with Sybil's objective being to wake up the dreamer. A platformer starring a bunny cat wandering in a land of dreams. Getting some deja vu here. To those of you that have heard this joke a dozen times before, whenever Pseudoregalia is brought up, I can feel your eyes rolling, but understand that as a Klonoa fan, I am legally bound to make this joke, or else lawyers will come to my house and beat me up with studded briefcases. What? That's what lawyers do to people, isn't it? So anyway, there are three main things I want to talk about: mechanics, ambience, and narrative. Let's go through them in order, shall we? Pseudoregalia is a Metroidvania, and with the territory comes the fact that Sybil does not have much of a moveset at first, the alternative being that she would have her full moveset only to have it stripped away from her after the intro, as other games have done in the past. For now, Sybil can walk, jump, hang on to ledges, crouch, and do a little backflip by pressing the crouch button after a jump. The first new ability you get is the Dreambreaker, Tonfa Blade, or is it a Tonfa Club? It's hard to tell. That allows you to attack enemies with a 3-hit combo and break down cracked walls. Additionally, the Dreambreaker gives you a magic gauge that builds up as you hit enemies. It has 3 levels, and each level you feel allows you to heal once, consuming that section of the gauge, though you can't move while healing. If you've played Hollow Knight, this should be familiar to you, as that game's soul gauge functions pretty similarly. Sybil can also throw the Dream Breaker, but doing so locks you out of any moves that use it until you grab it back. Getting hit with certain attacks by enemies will also make you drop your weapon. If the Dream Breaker falls into a pit or gets stuck somewhere, it will respawn near you. Eventually. Later on, you also get the Indignation power-up, which increases the Dream Breaker's attack power the fuller your magic gauge is. And the Strike Break upgrade gives you a charge attack that can break down reinforced walls. Good stuff. One other thing that I like about the Dream Breaker is that you whack more than just enemies with it. It's how you interact with these crystals that save your progress, and also how you unlock locked doors. Provided you have a key, just give the thing a good hit and there you go. Might seem obvious, but making every little interaction an extension of your base gameplay is really important. It would have been very easy to make saving the game or opening locked doors an interact prompt, used in the same way as talking to these little goats, but instead you do it the exact way you interact with 90% of things in the game. You hit them with the Dream Breaker. Not only does the gameplay remain more consistent this way, but I'd argue more fun too. It's the little things, everyone. Always the little things. Sybil's other abilities include the Slide, which is pretty self-explanatory. It causes Sybil to slide in a certain direction, remaining close to the ground and avoiding certain hitboxes, though it does not make you invincible. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Later on, the slide gets upgraded with the Solar Wind, which is basically a long jump that lets you clear large gaps, and also introduces you to the glory that is bunny hopping. Fun fact, this tech was in the game from the start, but the dev later added a special animation for it. Oh yeah, did I mention this game is from a solo dev? Pseudoregalia was originally made in a game jam, and in fact you can still play the jam version right now. I'll put the link in the description for those interested. Back to the abilities, next up are the Sun Greaves. These let you perform a kick in the air that, when used against walls, turns into a wall jump. You can wall jump up to 3 times, and after those 3 are used, you fall down from wherever you are. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little unintuitive to use these at first, because I'm used to wall jumps in 3D platformers launching you at a perpendicular angle from the wall. But in Pseudoregalia, you wall jump in an angle depending on the direction you're facing when you make contact. It's a little hard to get used to, but you will in time. The Sun Greaves also lets you do this. Good luck finding a practical use for this though. I certainly never felt like I had to use this tech. Next is this Sunsetter, a ground pound like attack that also doubles as a high jump if you press the button right after touching the ground. This is extremely useful for reaching higher ledges, especially when combined with the wall jump and the Cling Jam, which is basically a wall run. Just press the right trigger when facing a wall, along with either left or right on the joystick, and you do the wall run in that direction, gradually losing momentum until you start falling. Unless you manage to curve around in certain walls, in which case your moment resets. This even allows you to cling infinitely to rounded pillars or structures by wall running around them. Finally, the last 2 upgrades are Ascendant Light and the Soul Cutter. Ascendant Light allows you to attack those black orbs, to bounce off of them, and also applies this effect to any enemies you hit in the air too. Additionally, your Dream Breaker now glows, helping you traverse dark areas. Wow, that's a lot of things in one upgrade, huh? The Soul Cutter, on the other hand, is a projectile that is fired as a charge shot, same way as the Strike Break. It's hard to aim, but this can be mitigated by aiming in first-person mode. Sadly, just as with the Strike Break, the Soul Cutter does not see that much use and is only obtained very late into the game. Now, on their own, these skills can be used to solve puzzles, fight enemies, and generally find new ways to traverse the environment. But it's when you combine them that the depth of this game truly reveals itself. Sometimes, when you arrive at a certain room, you might think, oh, this room requires a certain upgrade. It is, after all, standard Metroidvania fare, so you're not wrong. However, a lot of the time, rooms that would normally need upgrade X can also be traversed by using upgrade Y plus upgrade Z plus a little bit of platforming skill. And again, if you've played other Metroidvanias, you would think that to be normal, since all platformers tend to have these little tricks. Except, I don't remember this level of experimentation being so on the nose and so encouraged as it is in Pseudoregalia. Passageways can change completely depending on the movement options you have, and even late game puzzles can be skipped entirely with the right arsenal, the right game knowledge, and some luck. Another thing to keep in mind is that as you gain more and more techniques that allow you to traverse the landscape, the order in which you acquire certain upgrades and clear certain areas stops mattering as much, being more dependent on your ability to use Sybil's techniques and environment to your advantage rather than finding the critical path. And to me, that's the biggest beauty of Pseudoregalia, honestly. Granted, there are a handful of exceptions. Every once in a while the game moves through a roadblock that says no coming in without this skill, but in my personal experience these moments were rare. It helps that Pseudoregalia has some pretty good visual indicators to help you understand how to get from point A to point B. For example, places that encourage the use of the Cling Gem usually have these blue flowers on the wall. This room right here is clearly too big of a climb for the Sunsetter's high jump or even a full 3 wall jumps. Combine all of those things and a moment is all it takes for you to realize that the game is asking you to use all 3 techniques together. On top of the regular upgrades are the aspects. These are pretty much optional, unlike the regular power-ups, which are mostly mandatory. Their effects change from increasing the power of your healing to increasing your magic gauge, and there's even one that gives you an extra wall jump, bringing them to a total of 4. Certainly makes a few rooms easier. Finally, there's... yeah, I guess I gotta talk about that. Okay, full disclosure, the clips you're watching are mostly taken from my second run of the game, which I completed specifically for the purposes of this video. My original first run, which I recorded many months ago, happened before the update that added the map. The map actually generated a lot of discussion among players, and personally I'm also a bit divided on it. On one hand, I honestly love the feeling of exploring freely without a clue of what I'm gonna find in this surreal place. That's also a feeling that I had on other Metroidvanias as well. On the other hand, I have to admit that the late game of Pseudoregalia in the vanilla version was made worse for me by the lack of a map.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Maybe a good solution for a sequel would be having different maps for different zones that you need to find. Like how dungeons in Zelda all have their own maps. That way you'd still get the sense of wonder when exploring for the first time before you find a map for that area, while retaining that ease of combing through the places you haven't explored yet when near the end of your run. Since the rooms don't show up in the map until you enter them for the first time either way, I think that would be a good middle of the road. And with that, we've covered mechanics. I mean, there are a handful of environmental gimmicks here and there, but these are more situational and aren't really part of Sybil's basic toolset. So let's go to Ambiance. Pseudoregalia's castle in a dream is divided into 8 different areas, each with their own vibe and song. However, one thing they do have in common is the general atmosphere of isolation. In most Metroidvanias I've played, from Super Metroid to Symphony of the Night and Hollow Knight, you don't typically go for long stretches of rooms without facing at least a handful of mooks, even if said mooks only walk around and don't have any attack per se. Metroid, for example, is a series famous for using the presence of enemies in its environments to instill a sense of danger in the player. You are alone.
She's not alone though.
In the sense that Samus is the only human here, but you're also surrounded by hostile creatures waiting for the chance to get a piece of you. That's a different vibe entirely from the areas in Pseudoregalia. You're dropped in this castle without much context, and though you have both enemies and the occasional friendly little goat, you also spend many room sequences completely on your own, lost in corridors covered in these strange tiles, with parts of the floor and walls dilapidated or missing in places. Rooms that feel too big, rooms that feel too small, rooms that would make absolutely zero sense if it hadn't already been established that we're in a dream. And yet it works. The strange mismatched architecture that would only be reasonable in a video game gives a weird sense of nostalgia. The fog and draw distance limitations that prevent you from seeing from one room into another seems like both a nod to how these games used to be done in the past, and also a way to keep you on your toes when exploring an area for the first time. And more than that, it feels like this place is trying to tell a story, a tale of events that happened long before you set your feet here. There's the dilapidated dungeon, the tutorial area of the game, marked by dozens of cages strewn around, most of their occupants seemingly long gone, and yet with a sort of serene air as if the place is frozen in time. In contrast, Castle Sansa is a far more welcoming area, arguably the closest thing to a hub the game has, with its maze-like hallways and large open spaces. It's also the only place connecting to the listless library, an area filled with comfy hay to sit on, and plenty of books to read if you need a rest from your exploration. From there, you go to Sansa Keep, lined up with the armors of knights and marked by its more muted color schemes, the distinct texture that covers up its floors, and arguably the most N64-esque song of the soundtrack, like if Ocarina of Time, Banjo-Kazooie and Mario 64 were mashed together. Briefly, you get the opportunity to exit the castle via the empty bailey, a sprawling courtyard with buildings and walls you get to climb, and also the best music in the game judging by the sheer amount of remixes people have made. Or maybe you got out here by going deeper into the castle, deeper into the underbelly. You think this is a late game area, but you're able to come here quite early. If you do, you probably feel as perplexed as I did, stumbling around in the dark, exploring these strange ruins that definitely feel like they don't belong underneath a castle, and these walls that could either be purple stone or some fleshy substance. I really hope it's flesh. You also probably wonder what kind of performances used to be held in the Twilight Theater. Or was this place apparently corroded recently, and why did it fall into disrepair to the point where its main gates are closed, and you need to basically find an alternative ways to get in or out? And, at last, you reach the tower remains, and as you scale this solitary spire, using each and every trick you learn to get to the top, you finally find what you've been seeking since the beginning of this journey. A tower holding the essence of the princess, never to be seen again. But with the three powers of the sun, one can find their own path. Now, there are some really interesting set pieces in each of these places, but I'll try not to spoil them as much as possible. After all, I do honestly hope that if you haven't played Pseudoregalia yet, and are watching this video, you get that wonder of traversing the dream for yourself. So, what was that about a princess? Well, let's go to our last topic, narrative. And for that, we need to go back to the start of the game. Once you get through that cutscene at the start, you can walk around the room you find yourself in. There are two things of note here. The first is a little goat near a broken cage that clearly fell down from the ceiling. I've referenced these goat butlers before, but I never really explained them up until now. These are goatlings, and they seem to be servants of whoever rules, or used to rule, this castle. These guys appear through the different areas and are the only NPCs you can interact with. Most just spout mundane banter like how they missed the comfy hay from the library or how they had their furniture taken away. Some are a little bit weird, and a rare few give you advice or drop tidbits of lore. This one in particular was locked up by the princess and is afraid of retribution now that he accidentally fell from his cage. This is the first time we hear her name, and it's in red font. Gee, she sounds lovely, can't wait to meet her. The other noteworthy item in this room is the mirror that Sybil materialized from. Doing so shows this dialogue. This is implied to be Sybil talking. It's also pretty much the only time she speaks in the entire game. And yes, it looks like she came to this place by choice, as if he jumps around dream worlds to help the respective dreamers. Advancing to the next section leads us to a goatling with one of the few lore exposition moments in the game. Your disguise is paper thin, but it'll fool most of them. But that it wouldn't matter because there's no getting past strong eyes. The implication here being that Sybil's visual similarity to goatlings is not natural, but rather some kind of glamour. And indeed, if you look at the Sybil that appears in the main menu, she has no horns like she does in the game. Maybe she takes on a different form depending on the dream world? We don't really know. Sybil, for the most part, is a mystery to us. And as for Strong Eyes, another name in red, just like the princess. And not long after, we get a glimpse of her. She floats in midair, apparently with her back turned to us. As soon as you approach... This is Strong Eyes, one of the only two bosses in the game. It's actually not hard, just attack twice, retreat, and repeat the process patiently until he's done. After that, the dilapidated dungeon can be exited without any more issues. But there's a strange message you can find near the end. A tower holding the essence of the princess never to be seen again. But with the 3 powers of the sun, one can find their own path.
Foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Before I talk about that tower though, I need to mention something else. Remember when I said you can read books inside the listless library? Well, some people have theorized, and I think it is an implication that makes sense, that the books in the library are all related to the person that dreamt up this castle. There are books on music, books on classic plays, books on cooking, a book about the sea, which gives us a hint in second person that Sybil wants to see this ocean one day, as well as, a book about a princess waiting to be rescued by a prince with the ending ripped off, a book about a woman with a magic sword in a quest for revenge, a book about a girl that marries a monster and leaves her family, a book about a jester that steals the sun, a book about a restaurant going under, and a book on how to deal with loss. On their own, the books in this collection don't seem to have anything to do with each other. But then you notice that the culinary book drives you insane, and there's also a book about a restaurant going under. Oh, and what's that? A goatling in the Twilight Theater with a seemingly nonsensical order of bean casserole that comes out of nowhere and has nothing to do with the context of the area he's in? Speaking of the cookbook driving you crazy, the book about dealing with loss has dialogue that mirrors it, repairing your mind. Maybe that restaurant did go under. Between the princess waiting for a prince, the girl that married a monster, and the swordswoman seeking revenge, there are a lot of fairy tales too. And this one, about a girl that gets whisked away to a fantastical world without strife. Like a dream perhaps? As for the jester that steals the sun, 3 of your upgrades, the Sunsetter, the Solar Wind, and the Sungreaves, are also sun-themed, and coincidentally, they're the 3 abilities you need to enter the tower where the essence of the princess supposedly is. And once you manage to get to the top of the tower remains, you see this.
Foreshadowing.
So, yeah. Remember when I said the map made the late game a lot easier than it was in vanilla? This is why. To enter the final area of the game, you need 5 major keys. I remember getting 4 in my original run of the game, but then I never got back to that save. They're spread out throughout the game, with one of them being right here in the tower, beckoning to the lost livestock. The other 4 are in Sansa Keep, the Empty Bailey, the Underbelly, and the Twilight Theater. The one in Sansa Keep is near a Forgotten Throne, or rather 2 Forgotten Thrones. The one in the Empty Bailey is guarded by this hand-like enemy which is pointing straight at it. The one in the Underbelly is surrounded by darkness and the deadly purple haze on all sides. And finally, the one in the theater is in its center stage for all to see. Once all of them have been collected, the door opens. This is the distorted memory. It's overtaken by a red haze, but your lack of vision doesn't matter much. All this area has is a simple corridor, and after that, there's no way to go but down. The final boss fight against the princess is also not too hard. My only advice is to not lock your view onto her, since she teleports so much it kinda screws with the camera angle. Otherwise, wait for her melee attacks to finish before you strike, hit any projectiles back at her, and eventually, you break down the dream. Not really the kind of person you want to hang out with, right? I barely remember what she was really like at this point. Oh, sorry, you're probably wondering who I am? Honestly, I don't really know anymore. Nobody special, I guess. But then, that's the whole reason you're here, right? I get it. I can't just hide here forever and pretend I don't exist. I'm sure I'll find something worth being awake for. Maybe I'll finally get into photography. That'd be nice, I think. So thanks, Goat Bunny Cat Lady. Sybil? Got it. I'll make sure to write it down as soon as I wake up. I don't want to forget you too. I'm sure you've got someone else to help out, right? So yeah, thanks. Take care, Sybil. And that's how the game ends. We never get to know who the dreamer is, but the fact that they refer to the princess in the third person implies that the dreamer and the princess are 2 separate people. The title of the song in the princess's fight, Paramnesiac, is a word that refers to a condition of being unable to differentiate between real memories and fantasy. Or, as the dreamer says, I barely remember what she was really like at this point. Pretty much everything is left open to interpretation here. Maybe the dreamer and the princess are one and the same, and the discrepancy in the narration is a way of indicating that the princess is the dreamer's vision of a past self. I mean, aside from Strong Eye, she's the only character mentioned by name until the ending, and the castle clearly belongs to the princess according to the Goatlinks. So it makes sense, right? Or maybe the dreamer is the prince from that one book with the ending torn out. Since Akib has 2 thrones, so maybe this is us helping him get over the princess and the way he saw her? Judging by all the imprisoned Goatlings and the way the princess is talked about, it was probably not in a positive light. Maybe it's even one of the parents of the princess, a king or a queen in this case. The book about a girl leaving her family for a monster seems oddly specific. And there's also the one about the jester being sentenced to death by a king and then stealing the sun. So maybe a particularly bad case of empty nest syndrome? It certainly would fall in line with how devoid of life the castle has become. If any or all of these explanations sounds like they're too far-fetched, that I'm reading too much into it, and that I have way too much caffeine into my system, first of all, how dare you? And second of all, yeah, that's kind of the point. It's not that Pseudoregalia has no story, but rather that its story is left intentionally vague on nearly all aspects. And really, that just adds to the themes of dream and memory to me. Sure, there are some things that can be inferred here and there, but if Sybil is really walking through someone's psyche turned into a place, it only makes sense that everything is scrambled around and whatever information can be found is allegorical to the point where only the dreamer would be able to make complete sense out of this picture. And with the dreamer now awake, all we have to observe are the little crumbs left behind. And that's okay. Pseudoregalia is a short 3D platformer Metroidvania that took me roughly 4 hours to clear on my second run. And despite its length, it has quickly become one of my favorite indie 3D platformers of all time, up there with A Hat in Time. As of this video's making, I'm not sure about the chance of a Pseudoregalia 2. The creator, Ritzler, is working on Electrokinetic, one of the games I mentioned earlier in the future releases section at the beginning of the video. And while there are some changes I would love to see in a sequel, like the map ones I talked about, and maybe having more than 2 bosses, I would also hope for the game to keep its controls that make moving around an absolute joy. Its retro surrealist aesthetic that invites me to explore, and its vague narrative that makes theorizing fun. And ironically enough, maybe it's short size too, because after all, dreams have to end eventually, don't they? My name is Strig, and thank you for your patronage. If you're leaving already, please consider leaving a tip in the form of a comment and a like. And if you'd like to come back, don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell on your way out. Thank you for visiting Strig's Game Cafe.